Hello, I'm Lucas. This is Bit of Lit, and I'm recording this on the 26th, so I don't have to do this tomorrow, because tomorrow is my birthday, the 27th, when you will see this, and I will be 28. And so I thought for my 28th birthday, I would make a list of 28 poems that I like. And on this list are, I believe, 15 different authors. One of them is unknown. Most of these I picked pairs of poems, and I didn't pick a particular order. I'm sure if you look at any of these poets, you will see some kind of pattern, namely that a lot of these poems and a lot of these poets I read when I was in college. And some of them I read after. But yeah, I'm not gonna talk about any of them too long. I just want to list them for you so that you can go explore. I'll leave a link to as many as I can find. It might take me a while to find them. But yeah, this is 28 poems for 28 birthdays. And for 28 and 27, I chose The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe and The Bells by Edgar Allan Poe. The Raven, I think, is just a brilliant poem. I'm sure you've heard of it, at the very least. The Bells, again, I think it's a very interesting poem. And it feels like you're going insane as you read it. And yeah. For 26 and 25, I picked Emily Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death and I Felt a Funeral in My Brain. Two very, very popular, very common ones. I'm not extremely well read on her. I just kind of like the most popular ones because they are the most catchy, I guess, and the most interesting. They have a lot that you can pick at. So anyway, these are some poems that I read after college. And I chose for 24 and 23 W.H. Auden and Stop All the Clocks, Cut Off the Telephone. I'm not entirely sure if that's the name of the poem, but it's the first line. And then September 1st, 1939, which is about World War II and everything about that. And Stop All the Clocks, Cut Off the Telephone is it's a really beautiful poem that you've probably heard if you've ever watched 3 Weddings and a Funeral, I believe is the name of it. With, yeah, anyway. The next 2 are from William Wordsworth, who has easily the best name for any poet. I chose The Solitary Reaper, which is it makes me feel a lot, which that's the main goal for a lot of these poems. If maybe you've read them, maybe you haven't, but if they made me feel something, then I picked them. And the other one was I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which is a really interesting poem, and you can pull a lot from it, take a lot of different interpretations. That's the way it is for most of these. A lot of these poems are about love. Generally, and not so much the last one I just mentioned, but a lot of these poems will be about love and different avenues of that, so just keep that in mind. For 20 and 19, I chose Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and I chose The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which is a classic Gothic horrifying poem, very environmentally oriented in a way, if you want to read it that way, because nature was very at the forefront of people's minds in the romance literary tradition. And The Pains of Sleep is I don't even know where to begin. I love the name of it, for one, and again, it speaks to me, you know. But I don't have time to keep going because we are not even halfway done, and it's about 5 minutes long. Then we've got for 18 and 17 Emily Bronte. There's a poem, I couldn't remember the name of it and I couldn't find it online. But it's about, like, if you look into her real life, you can make parallels to her real life about one of her sisters when they were very, very young, passing away. Not any of the other ones that are famous. But anyway, because I couldn't remember that one, I chose No Coward Soul Is Mine, which is gets you going, and Plead for Me, which is kind of sad. And it feels sort of pathetic in a way, not in a bad way, just it makes you feel pathetic, I guess. It makes me feel pathetic, but in a good way. It's, again, something that it moves me. It makes me feel for Emily, the speaker at least. And then 16 and 15, we talked about one of these poems recently, Porphyria's Lover by Robert Browning. I am disturbed by that poem. I love that poem. There's so many different things to talk about, especially with the way he justifies himself. And then My Last Duchess, which is, again, very satirical and full of crazy, psychotic men doing terrible things to women, which, now that I say that out loud, makes me look a little bit bad. But I think he's being very critical of that bravado. And then, of course, you can't mention Robert Browning without mentioning Elizabeth Barrett Browning for 14 and 13. Of course, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways. I think that's just the first line. I don't know if that's exactly the name, but if there's no name, I guess usually people talk about the first line. And then My Heart and I, yeah. It's kind of a sad poem, but it's very emotional, again. And that's what I want out of my poetry. I want to be moved, you know? Anyway, and then we've got probably my favorite poet, even though I have some mixed feelings about him. He makes me feel like he's one of the few things in American culture that really makes me proud of, like, being from America. And that would be Walt Whitman, or being happy that I'm from America and knowing Americans and all that stuff. Anyway, there were so many. I could have made a whole list of 28 Walt Whitman poems, but I chose for number 12, Old War Dreams, which I have a reading of. It's not very good. It's kind of creepy, and the sound is not very good. But and then another classic of his. It was hard not to pick, like, A Song of Myself or Oh Captain, My Captain. Both of those are fantastic. Or I Hear America Singing, or is that what it's called? I Hear America Singing, or America. I have so many. Beat Drum, I believe is what it's called. That one is also, like, there's just so many I love. Anyway, I chose, or what is that one about the learned professor? I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, my other one, number 11, is A Noiseless Patient Spider. It's a great poem. And people should read Walt Whitman. He's, I would say he's a little bit tough to get into because he's so freeform, except Oh Captain, My Captain. But I love Walt Whitman, and I think if you're American especially, you should look into him, explore him, or revisit him if you didn't like him before. It's tough to be happy to be American or proud, but he's like so enthusiastic about it. It's infectious. Anyway, yeah, I love Walt Whitman. And I just remembered, I left a poem out that I wanted to say, so we'll name that as a bonus. And I can't think of the poet. Hopefully it'll come to me. It's on the tip of my tongue. And then number 10 and 9, Sonnet 138. I didn't write the top line. I should have. And Sonnet 116 by William Shakespeare. These are both about love in different ways. And I love how he explores love in totally different avenues. So yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong with Shakespeare. There are some poems that aren't that great by him, of course. I mean, he's not perfect, but the wordplay is fantastic, and I really enjoy those two. And then number 8, I put Paradise Lost because I love Paradise Lost. And then number 7, I put Beowulf. Paradise Lost is by John Milton. And then Beowulf is number 7, unknown author. Really interesting, epic story about Beowulf. And number 6 and number 5, we finally have someone who breaks the mold in a certain way. Langston Hughes, and I chose Dreams, which I have also done a reading for Poetry Thursday. And The Negro Speaks of Rivers. He's the only person of color on this list. And that is, there were a few that I could have put in, Claude McKay or Maya Angelou or someone like that, but my reading of people of color is quite limited in terms of poetry and literature in general, and I need to amend that. But I really love Langston Hughes, about, I'd say, almost as much as I love Walt Whitman. I'm trying to make this short, so I'm not gonna gush. But he's got a lot of good poems, and you should just read him too. And then Christina Rossetti for number 4. Number 3, Goblin Market, which is really wild poem. Let's leave it at that. Just go explore, go read a lot of these, go read all of them, why don't you? And then After Death, of course. Yeah, it was tough to pick this one, because there were a couple that I really like, but I was rereading them, and I went with After Death because it felt right. It seems a little strange to put it at number 3, but these are not in any particular order. Anyway, number 2 and number 1. Who is that poet? What is his name? Henry Watson? Okay. Number 2 and number 1, I chose William Butler Yeats for The Circus Animal's Desertion, which is really a great meditative piece by Yeats. And The Second Coming, which is just the most depressing thing I've ever read in my life. And it soothes me in a way. And then as a bonus, number 0, I suppose, would be, I hope I get his name right, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. His poem, Evangeline, phenomenal. It's stunning. He's probably a better poet than Walt Whitman, but I have not read a lot of his work. But I have read Evangeline and a few other poems, and yeah, Evangeline. Oh, is that the name of it? I hope that's the name of it. I can't remember now. I feel embarrassed, but I'm pretty sure it's Evangeline. And yeah, that'll be that. 28 poems for 28 birthdays. I hope you read some of them. I'll leave a link. And I guess that was 29 poems because of the bonus one. Anyway, thank you. Goodbye.